Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Learn English. I'm so happy you're here with us today. It is a beautiful day to learn something new
It
together.
really is.
I've been looking forward to this session all morning because, well, we're talking about the fundamental building blocks of communication.
Hey there. I am just as excited as you are. I had a great cup of coffee this morning, and now I'm completely ready to dive into some English. It's always a pleasure to spend this time with all of you.
That's right. I remember when I first started learning a second language, and I just felt so overwhelmed by all the big words. I'd stare at this massive dictionary and just panic.
Oh, absolutely. The paralysis is so common.
Yeah, but then I realized that most of my day was just spent using the exact same simple sentences over and over again.
I totally agree. I mean, it's not about knowing the biggest words in the dictionary. It's really about knowing the sentences that actually help you get through your day.
Exactly. And that is exactly what we're going to cover today. What if I told you that trying to memorize like 10,000 words actually makes you less fluent in your first month than mastering just 50?
It sounds super counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
Because we're basically conditioned to view language as this giant mountain of vocabulary, like fluency equals sheer volume.
Right. Like if I know more words, I am better at the language.
Yeah, but cognitive linguistics paints a very different picture of how human beings actually connect in the real world.
So today we're going to learn the 50 daily English sentences that beginners absolutely must know. By the end of this deep dive, you'll be able to introduce yourself, ask for help, and just, navigate basic social situations with total confidence.
We want to hear from you too. Before we really get into the list, think about this. What is the one English sentence you find yourself using the most? Like your go-to phrase?
Oh, that's a great question.
Go ahead and leave a comment below right now and let us know. We love reading your stories.
And while you're down there, make sure to like and subscribe to Learn English. We put out new lessons all the time to help you reach your goals, and we really want to be part of your English journey every step of the way.
Absolutely. So now we've got the introductions out of the way, let's just jump right into our first set of essential sentences.
Let's do it. We're starting with the architecture of connection. When you meet someone, you need a basic structure.
You do. You need a reliable entry point.
And most of these sentences follow a very simple, very strict formula. It's subject plus verb plus object. For example, I am your host.
That's perfect. The subject-verb-object blueprint is basically the engine driving the entire English language.
Which, seems really basic to us native speakers, but not every language relies so heavily on that specific word order, do they?
No, not at all. Many languages are highly inflected. That means the ends of the words actually change to tell you who is doing what to whom.
Oh, right. So you can jumble the words up and it still makes sense?
Exactly. In those languages, you can mix up the word order. But English, well, English lost most of its inflections centuries ago.
So the order is everything.
Yeah, because we don't have those word endings to guide us, English became incredibly rigid about word order. The position of the word literally tells you its job. Subject, then verb, then object.
Like a straight line.
A totally straight, unbending line. So let's look at 5 very concrete examples for greetings and introductions, using this kind of simple linear logic.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, we have, hello, how are you? Second is, my name is, and then you say your name. Third is, nice to meet you. Fourth is, I'm from the United States. And fifth is, how's it going?
Those are so important. I use hello, how are you? Almost every single time I walk into my local grocery store.
It's the standard.
It is. It's polite, and it opens the door for friendly interaction without being weird. But do you use how's it going?
More often than hello.
I actually do. How's it going? Feels just a bit more casual. I use it with my friends or when I see my neighbors in the morning. Yeah, it's definitely got a different vibe.
It's a very natural way to say hello in a relaxed setting. In sociolinguistics, we actually categorize these phrases as tools for managing social distance.
Social distance, like keeping people at arm's length.
Sort of, yeah. Hello, how are you? From a linguistic standpoint, this is rarely a genuine, inquiry into someone's medical state, right? You
Oh,
don't want them to list their symptoms.
right. If I ask the cashier how they are, I don't expect to hear about their back pain.
Exactly. It's what we call phatic communion. The words are basically just there to perform a social function, not to transfer actual data.
Okay, so it's ritual.
Yes, a totally safe ritual.
Yeah.
You deploy it when you need to maintain a respectful professional distance. Contrast that with "how's it going?" which signals a lowering of social barriers.
I see. So, hello, how are you? Is like wearing a suit and tie, maintaining professional distance. Well, how's it going is wearing a t-shirt and jeans.
That's a great way to put it. And deploying the T-shirt greeting in a highly formal suit and tie environment creates immediate social friction. People feel that an invisible boundary got crossed.
Okay, wait, I have to challenge this premise slightly.
Sure, go ahead.
If these formulas are so simple, just SVO blueprints and basic suit and tie rituals, why is it that beginners constantly freeze up in real life?
The paralysis.
Yeah, you see it all the time.
Yep.
Someone approaches a learner, smiles, says, "How are you?" And the learner just turns into a deer in headlights. If it's so simple, why the panic?
That is the core paradox of the beginner's experience, and it comes down to cognitive load and working memory.
Working memory, meaning what we can hold in our brain right at that second.
Right. The human brain's working memory has severe limits. It can only hold and process a few chunks of information at a time. So when a beginner is put on the spot, their brain doesn't instantly reach for the prepackaged ritual.
What does it reach for instead?
Well, their brain often tries to translate their exact, nuanced emotional state into a brand new English sentence from scratch.
Oh, so instead of just saying, "I am fine," their brain is going into overdrive trying to formulate, "I am currently experiencing mild anxiety because I can't find the apples."
Exactly. They're trying to access complex vocabulary, construct grammar, conjugate verbs, and read the native speaker's body language all at the same time.
And the brain just
The
crashes.
cognitive load spikes, the working memory bottlenecks, and boom, total paralysis. The deer in headlights.
Wow, that makes so much sense. So trusting the simple formulas actually bypasses that bottleneck.
It does. Relying on the prepackaged sentence lets the brain's executive function relax a little.
And part of that formula is also understanding the timing, right? Like the source material talks about a dinner party scenario that I think is
Oh, the
hilarious.
timing errors. Yeah.
Yeah, so imagine you arrive at a party, you walk through the door, you meet the host, and the tool you pull out of your kit is "nice to meet you."
Which is the perfect, universally recognized entry mechanism.
But what happens if the beginner's brain glitches? And instead of the entry phrase, they accidentally pull out an exit phrase? What if they shake the host's hand and say, "Have a nice day"?
The social consequence of that is just so jarring. The host will probably experience a moment of utter confusion.
Like, wait, are you leaving already?
Right. They'll assume the guest is exceptionally rude or dismissive or literally turning around to leave the party right that second.
You've essentially slammed the door in their face without meaning to, just because you pull a hammer out of the toolkit when you needed a screwdriver.
It's a beautiful illustration of how these sentences are rigid cues. Nice to meet you means I'm open to connection. Have a nice day means this interaction is officially over.
Mixing them up completely breaks the social contract.
It really does.
So let's say our learner hasn't accidentally told the host to leave their own party. The connection is made, the conversation is started. But, any conversation is a moving vehicle, and you're going to hit potholes.
Inevitably. Misunderstandings always happen.
Right. Which brings us to the next critical set of tools. The magic words and navigating friction. Let's add some more to our list.
A conversation without repair mechanisms is doomed.
So true. So sentence 6 is "please." Sentence 7 is "thank you." Sentence 8 is "you're welcome." These are the magic words we learn as kids, but they're still the most important sentences in English.
They really are the foundation of politeness. And here's a question for all of you listening at home. When was the last time you said thank you in English?
Was it at a restaurant? Maybe at work? Tell us in the comments.
We also need to know how to say things aren't quite right.
Yeah, you have to be able to admit fault. So sentence 10 is "I'm sorry."
I actually love how you compared those earlier to the suspension system in a car.
Oh, right. Yeah, you're driving down the road of this new language and you hit a bump, you mishear a word, or you bump shoulders with someone. Excuse me and I'm sorry are the shock absorbers.
Exactly. If you don't have those shock absorbers, the whole vehicle takes the full impact and eventually the conversation just breaks down.
The axle snaps.
In linguistics, we actually call these mitigation devices. They soften the blow of a face-threatening act.
Nice threatening act. That sounds so dramatic.
It just means anything that threatens someone's social dignity. But honestly, I want to push past the standard apologies and look at sentences 11 and 12.
Okay. Which are, I don't know and I don't understand.
Right. From a cognitive standpoint, these two sentences are absolute lifesavers for beginners. But paradoxically, they're the hardest ones for people to actually use
Harder than apologizing. Why is that?
because of the psychological vulnerability. Think about the temptation a beginner faces. A native speaker's talking to them, speaking way too fast, using idioms.
And the learner is just completely lost in the sauce.
Exactly. What is the instinctual human response to that kind of social pressure?
Ah, you smile and you nod. You just do the polite nod to maintain the illusion that you belong in the conversation. You just hope you'll eventually catch up.
Yes. The polite nod is a classic defense mechanism. But linguistically, it's a devastating trap.
A trap. How so?
Conversation relies on something called common ground. That's the shared understanding between speakers. When you nod, the native speaker assumes common ground exists.
Oh no! So they think you get it.
They think you understand perfectly. So they build their next sentence on top of the last one, and they usually speak even faster and with more complexity.
It's a conversational house of cards.
It is. And it will inevitably collapse.
Uh,
And usually the collapse happens later, resulting in a much more embarrassing situation when it becomes obvious you understood nothing.
right, like they ask you a direct question based on what they just said and you just stare at them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Actively deploying the phrase, "I'm sorry, I don't understand," completely resets the dynamic. It stops the house of cards from being built.
It's like pulling the emergency brake on a runaway train. But I totally get why beginners hate doing it. It feels like admitting defeat, like saying, I'm bad at this language.
We really have to reframe that. Saying "I don't understand" is not a failure. It is a highly advanced, strategic conversational move.
Really? An advanced move.
Yes. It signals to the native speaker, hey, I am engaged, I am listening, I want to connect with you, but I need you to collaborate with me by adjusting your delivery.
I love that. It invites the other person to become a partner in fixing the breakdown rather than an adversary.
Exactly. It's a proactive strategy.
Well, speaking of strategies, don't forget the simplest affirmations and negations. Sentence 13 is yes, please. Sentence 14 is no, thank you. And sentence 15 is I understand.
Simple, direct, and incredibly effective.
Can you see how these simple structures help you navigate a whole day? Whether you're ordering food or meeting a new coworker, these 15 sentences are your best friends.
They really are.
So now that we've covered the basics of saying hello, being polite, and absorbing friction, let's build on that. We need to know how to ask for things and express our physical needs.
This is where English becomes intensely practical.
Let's introduce some sentences you'll use when you're out and about in the physical world. Sentence 16 is arguably the most important sentence in any language globally. Where is the bathroom?
A universally urgent concept.
Oh, definitely. I have had to aggressively use that one in many different countries.
We've all been there.
Sentence 17 is, how much is this? You'll use this every time you go shopping. Sentence 18 is, can you help me? And sentence 19 is, what time is it?
We also need phrases for declaring physical states, like I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, and I'm tired.
Okay, here is where the source material gets deeply fascinating to me. We have these basic functional needs, but how we articulate them changes the entire social reality of the interaction.
You're talking about the formality upgrade.
Yes, the sources highlight the stark difference between saying I want and I would like.
This specific upgrade touches on one of the most fascinating historical quirks of the English language.
A historical quirk. I love these.
Yeah. To understand why "I would like" is so crucial, you actually have to look at what English is missing.
What are we missing?
Well, if you look at many Romance or Germanic languages, Spanish, French, German, Russian, they possess a built-in grammatical feature for politeness. It's called the TV distinction.
Right, like tu versus vous in French. A casual you for your friends and a formal you for strangers, or like your boss.
Exactly. The respect and the social distance are baked right into the pronoun itself. The grammar does all the heavy lifting for you.
That's super convenient.
But modern English doesn't have this. We used to, hundreds of years ago, we had thou for casual intimacy and you for formal respect.
Wait, that was the casual one? I always thought it sounded fancy because of Shakespeare.
Nope, that was the informal one. But over time, thou dropped out of the language entirely. So today, you is just you.
So I say you to my spouse, and I say you to the president. The pronoun gives zero clue about our relationship.
Precisely. And because of that absence, English speakers had to engineer politeness elsewhere in the sentence.
How do we do that?
We achieve this necessary social distance through the use of modal verbs, words like could, should, and critically would.
So we are substituting grammatical distance for social distance. Let's really map out the impact of this. Imagine I walk into a cafe. If I use the base, blunt, subject-verb-object form, I walk up to the counter and just say, I want a coffee.
Well, if I'm the barista, I will probably still make your coffee. But my internal perception of you is going to be that you are abrupt, demanding, and lacking basic social grace.
Ouch.
Because I want is a direct declaration of your internal desire. It leaves absolutely no room for my agency. It's basically a command.
It does feel aggressive when you think about it. But if I apply the formality upgrade using those modal verbs, I approach the counter and say, I would like a coffee, please.
The entire psychological energy of the interaction shifts instantly, which implies a conditional state.
A conditional state, like it's hypothetical.
Yes, it softens the demand into a hypothetical desire,
Okay.
which structurally offers the listener the option to fulfill it or not.
Yeah.
It is highly deferential.
It's astonishing how adding just one auxiliary word completely alters how a stranger assesses your character. It transforms a harsh command into a polite invitation.
It really does. And the sources actually codify this into 3 golden rules for asking questions or requesting things from strangers.
Right. First, you preface the interaction with, to politely break their focus and get their attention.
Crucial stuff.
Second, you speak your request slowly and clearly. And third, you resolve the interaction with thank you.
It functions as a perfect, repeatable social script.
Let's apply this script to a high-stress scenario. Imagine we're at a train station and I'm lost.
Okay, a classic beginner nightmare.
Right. A beginner shouldn't just sprint up to a stranger on the platform and shout, "Where is the train?" That's alarming and abrasive.
You'd probably scare them away.
Exactly. Instead, you stack the tools from your 50-sentence kit. You approach, you apply the friction absorber, you declare your state, and you make the request using the rules.
So what does that sound like?
It sounds like, "Excuse me, can you help me? I'm lost. Where is the train station?"
That is perfect. By stacking those incredibly simple phrases, the beginner has just executed a highly sophisticated, deeply polite social maneuver.
And they didn't even use any advanced vocabulary.
No, but they perfectly match the social rhythm of a native speaker, which almost guarantees a helpful and empathetic response.
Okay, so we've survived the initial contact. We can find the bathroom, we can politely order a coffee, and we can find the train without offending anyone. The immediate panic is gone.
Survival mode deactivated.
Right. But life isn't just a series of transactional requests. You might end up sitting next to your neighbor on that train ride for 20 minutes.
And sitting in silence is awkward.
Exactly. How do we bridge the gap from merely surviving an environment to actually connecting with the people in it?
This requires transitioning into the 4th pillar of our toolkit, small talk and opinions.
Small talk. The thing introverts dread globally.
True, but the sources provide phrases specifically designed to move beyond the purely transactional. We have "how's your day?" which actually invites a narrative response rather than just a phatic ritual.
Like, they might actually tell you about their day.
Right. Then we have "what do you do?" which is the standard Anglo-American query into profession and identity, and Where do you live?
And then we finally get to articulate our inner world. I like this and I don't like this.
Which sounds almost childishly simple, doesn't it?
It really does. But articulating preference is the absolute foundation of finding common ground with another human being. Preferences define personality.
Absolutely. The toolkit also gives us the mechanics for scheduling and coordinating our status with others. Sentences like, "What's up? I'm busy and I'm free."
Let's go. Wait a minute, and I'm coming.
And importantly, it provides a suite of exit phrases to safely disengage when the small talk is over. "I'm going home. See you later. Have a nice day. Good morning and good night."
Okay, I have a major issue to raise here. Something the source text highlights that completely complicates everything we've just discussed about these phrases.
Ooh, what's the complication?
It's not just about memorizing the vocabulary of these phrases. The text introduces the critical and, frankly, terrifying role of tone.
Ah, tone. Yes, or prosody, as linguists call it. It is the invisible architecture of spoken English.
Invisible architecture, explain that.
Well, you can have the grammar flawlessly constructed, the subject, verb, object perfectly aligned, but if your prosody is wrong, the semantic meaning of the words is entirely overridden.
Overridden, like the tone deletes the dictionary definition.
Completely. The sources use "have a nice day" as the prime example.
Let's walk through how tone alters that specific sentence.
Okay, so English relies heavily on pitch contours to convey emotion and intent. If you say, "have a nice day," with a rising pitch at the end and a dynamic, varied melody, it functions as a genuine blessing.
Like, have a nice day. It sounds warm and authentic.
Exactly. But if you strip away that melody and deliver the exact same grammatical structure with a flat, downward, monotone pitch, "have nice N-A," the brain of the listener processes it as something entirely different.
It sounds incredibly dismissive, like you're mad at me.
It sounds highly dismissive, angry, or just dripping with sarcasm. The auditory cortex of the native speaker processes that flat tone as a threat or an insult, completely ignoring the literal positive definition of the words nice and day.
The energy of the delivery completely hijacks the meaning. But wait, this is where I have to push back hard on this whole concept.
Push back away.
We just established earlier that a beginner's working memory is already redlining. They are maxed out trying to remember the vocabulary, struggling to put the subject before the verb, and trying not to accidentally use the wrong greeting.
True.
Now you're telling me they also have to juggle their pitch contours and prosody simultaneously in real time? That sounds functionally impossible. It's like asking someone to juggle flaming torches while solving a math equation in their head.
It is a massive cognitive demand. And frankly, if they try to calculate their tone in real time during a live conversation, they will fail.
So what's the solution? Are they just doomed to sound sarcastic?
No, the solution, which the source material touches upon, relies on the neurological concept of motor learning, or muscle memory for the mouth.
Muscle memory, like a tennis player practicing a backhand swing.
Exactly like that. Language isn't just a cognitive software program. It is a highly complex physical activity.
Because you're moving your body.
Yes. It requires precise coordination of the vocal cords, the diaphragm, the tongue, and the lips. You cannot wait until the high-pressure environment of a live conversation to figure out the physical execution of a phrase.
You have to practice it beforehand.
You must practice the phrase out loud with the intended emotion in a low-pressure environment.
So if I am a learner and I just read the phrase "good morning" silently in my textbook over and over, my brain might know the spelling, but my body has literally no idea how to perform it.
Precisely. Silent reading entirely bypasses the motor cortex. By physically practicing saying "good morning" out loud in your room with a bright, energetic, rising tone, you are forging a physical neural pathway.
A pathway between the vocabulary and the muscles.
Yes, between the vocabulary chunk and the specific muscle movements required to produce that exact tone.
You're bundling the tone and the words together into one single file in your brain.
That's a perfect analogy. The tone becomes permanently encoded into that specific prepackaged chunk.
So when you step onto the train and see your neighbor, your executive function doesn't have to scramble to calculate the correct emotional pitch.
Right. Your motor cortex just automatically plays the good morning power chord with the exact correct melody. It drastically reduces the cognitive strain in the moment.
You are training your nervous system, not just your intellect. That makes so much sense, and it makes practicing out loud seem way more important than just an optional exercise.
It's absolutely mandatory for fluency.
So, with our tone locked in via muscle memory and our small talk flowing naturally, let's round out the ultimate toolkit with the final sets of phrases.
We need to navigate specific environments and learn how to verbally resolve our emotional states.
Let's look at section 5 of our toolkit, which deals directly with environmental navigation.
In a restaurant setting, for example, after you've used your formality upgrade to politely order your food, you need sentence 42 to actually leave. Can I have the check, please?
Crucial. And when navigating transit or unfamiliar buildings, you need where's the exit? How do I get to the airport? And the vital question of scale, is it far?
You really need to know if you can walk it or if you need a taxi.
Oh, absolutely. And then we get to what I consider the ultimate small talk life raft, commenting on the environment itself. It's cold and it's hot.
Discussing the weather is often mocked as a cliche, like it's the lowest form of conversation.
It kind of is, though.
But from a sociological perspective, it serves a profoundly important function. The weather is a shared, undeniable reality.
That's true. Everyone in the room is experiencing the exact same temperature.
Right, so it is a completely safe, neutral territory where two strangers can briefly align their perspectives without risking any offense. It is a low-stakes test of social compatibility.
It's a way of saying, hey, we are both experiencing this physical reality together, therefore we have something in common. We're on the same team.
Exactly. And finally, the toolkit provides sentences to resolve our state of being. I'm happy, I'm fine, and sentence 50, which I actually think is quite beautiful. Everything is okay.
Everything is okay.
I want to spend a moment on that specific phrase, everything is okay, because it serves as a deeply powerful endpoint to this 50-sentence toolkit.
Why that one specifically?
We often think of language strictly as a tool for extracting information, right? Getting the coffee, finding the train, locating the bathroom.
Transactional stuff.
Right. But language is equally a tool for regulating our shared emotional reality.
Regulating our shared reality, what does that mean in practice?
Human beings are highly sensitive to the emotional states of those around them. When a beginner is struggling to communicate, or when there is obvious confusion in an interaction, tension naturally rises for both people.
Yeah, the native speaker gets anxious because they want to help but don't know how, and the learner is panicking.
Exactly. Being able to look at a host or a stranger who's trying to help you, take a breath and say, everything is okay, is a brilliant mechanism for co-regulation.
It de-escalates the anxiety.
It does. It uses language not to ask for something, but to offer comfort and stability to the interaction. It acts as an emotional anchor.
That is a remarkable way to view such a simple sentence. It really proves these basic structures are doing heavy psychological lifting.
They are holding up the whole social framework.
But just to bring us back down to earth for a second, context remains king.
Context is always king.
I want to highlight a scenario that proves why these tools are only effective if you actually understand the physical environment you are in.
Let's hear it.
Imagine you are at a restaurant. You have just finished a massive, fantastic meal. The plates are scraped clean. You are stuffed.
Okay, setting the scene.
You are trying to signal to the waiter that you are ready to conclude the transaction and pay. But in a moment of panic, you reach into your mental toolkit and accidentally pull out sentence 20, I'm hungry, instead of sentence 42. Can I have the check, please?
Oh, no.
What happens?
Well, waiter is going to experience severe cognitive dissonance looking at your totally empty plates, and they will likely assume you are completely unsatisfied and want a second dinner.
Exactly. You've used perfectly grammatical, flawless SVO English to manifest a completely incorrect reality.
It's a stark reminder that possessing the tool is really only half the battle. Correctly diagnosing the environment is the other half.
And this brings us to a critical, completely unavoidable phase of the learning process. We have built this robust 50-sentence toolkit, but even with the best tools and lots of practice out loud, The human brain is lazy.
It loves shortcuts,
It will try to find shortcuts. It will try to map the rules of the new language directly onto the rules of the old language.
which leads us directly into the dangerous and often highly amusing trap of direct translation.
This is where things get really frustrating for learners, but I think we need to reframe this entirely for our audience.
I agree.
The core principle we need to establish here is that making structural mistakes is not a sign of failure. It is an expected, normal, and frankly mandatory part of building fluency.
You can't reach fluency without passing through the mistake phase.
But because our brains look for patterns, some of these mistakes are universally common across all learners.
Yes. The source material shares a classic cautionary tale regarding the danger of false friends.
False friends, words that look or sound similar across two different languages but carry vastly different meanings.
Exactly. The anecdote details a Spanish-speaking learner trying to express an embarrassing situation in English. They attempted a direct translation of "I'm embarrassed," reaching for the Spanish word embarazada.
Oh boy, I know where this is going.
Because of that false friend in the vocabulary, they accidentally announced to a room full of people, "I'm pregnant."
Which is objectively hilarious, and I am absolutely certain it branded that specific vocabulary lesson into their brain forever. They will never make that mistake again.
Trial by fire. But beyond funny vocabulary mix-ups, the sources highlight three very specific structural errors that almost every beginner makes.
Let's go through them. Error number 1. A learner tries to express alignment with an idea, and they say, I am agree, instead of the correct phrase, I agree.
I hear this one constantly. And if we unpack the underlying logic of English structure, we can see exactly why a highly intelligent brain makes this specific mistake.
Right, it's not a stupid mistake. It's an error born of logical pattern recognition.
Exactly. Because earlier in the toolkit, the brain learned to declare its state of being. I am happy, I am tired, I am hungry.
Right. And words like happy, tired, and hungry function as adjectives in English. They describe a state.
The learner's brain recognizes this really reliable pattern. They think, okay, agreement is my current state of being, therefore I must apply the I am structure. So they logically say, I am agree.
It is a perfectly logical assumption based on the data they have. But the English language throws a curveball.
It does. The linguistic rule here is that in English, agree is not an adjective. It is an action. It is the verb itself.
Going all the way back to our foundational blueprint from the very beginning of this deep dive. Subject plus verb.
Exactly. I is the subject. Agree is the verb. I agree. You do not need the verb am to act as a bridge because agree is already doing the heavy lifting.
It makes complete sense when you look under the hood of the grammar, but you can clearly see why a clever, pattern-seeking brain would fall right into that trap.
Absolutely. Let's look at common error number 2. A learner points at an unfamiliar object and asks the native speaker how it's called. Instead of the correct English phrasing, what is it called? Or what is this?
I've heard that one a lot, too, how it's called.
This is a classic example of negative transfer from a native language. In many Romance languages, the structure for inquiring about an object's name translates literally to how does one call this? Or how does it call itself?
Oh, like comment ça s'appelle in French, how it calls itself.
Precisely. The learner takes the interrogative word how and transfers it directly over to English. But English conceptualizes identity differently.
How so?
We categorize the identity or name of an object as a what, a thing. We don't categorize it as a how, which implies a process.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
Which perfectly transitions us into common error number 3. And I honestly think this one reveals a deep, almost philosophical difference in how different cultures view human existence.
To the big one.
A learner wants to state their age to a new friend. They say, I have 20 years, instead of the correct English phrase, I am 20 years old.
This touches on conceptual metaphor theory, specifically how different languages use metaphor to structure abstract concepts like time and age.
Let's really explore that. If you are listening to this right now in English, think about how your native language or other languages you studied conceptualize age.
In languages like Spanish or French, Age is treated metaphorically as a possession. It is an accumulation of time.
You literally have years. Tengo 20 años. I have 20 years.
Yes, in the exact same way you have coins in your pocket or books on a shelf. The years are tangible objects you have collected over your lifetime.
But English employs an entirely different conceptual metaphor. In English, age is not a possession, it is an intrinsic state of being.
You do not carry your years, you embody them.
You are 20 years old. The passage of time has physically altered your state. I am 20.
It is a profound shift in perspective, moving from accumulation to embodiment.
It really is, and this is the crucial point the sources emphasize. When a learner makes these specific mistakes saying, I have 20 years or I am agree, it does not mean their brain is failing.
Far from it. Making those specific structural errors is empirical proof that the learner's brain is working flawlessly.
It proves they are learning.
Yes, the brain is actively recognizing complex patterns, categorizing new data, and applying logical rules. It is simply applying the rules of the native language to the target language.
These mistakes are basically visible signposts of cognitive processing. They show that the mental bridge between the two languages is actively under construction.
And as the source material brilliantly reminds us, the ultimate goal of learning these 50 sentences isn't grammatical perfection anyway. The real goal is human connection.
Right. If you walk up to an English speaker and say, I have 20 years, they are not going to think you literally have 20 physical years zipped up in your backpack.
No, they know exactly what you mean. The communication was totally successful.
That is the most empowering takeaway here. As long as the semantic intent is understood, the interaction is a success. The grammatical edges will eventually smooth themselves out over time through exposure, but the human connection happens instantaneously.
Fear of structural errors should absolutely never prevent a learner from deploying this toolkit.
So let's step back and survey the massive linguistic landscape we have just traversed today. We have broken down the ultimate beginner's toolkit, and hopefully we've stripped away the terror of that intimidating 1,000-page dictionary.
To synthesize everything we've explored, this toolkit really relies on three foundational pillars.
First, we established the core engine, the basic subject plus verb structure. This is the unyielding blueprint for introductions and declaring physical or emotional states, SVO.
Second, we identified the essential question words, the wheres, the hows, and the whats. These are the specific surgical tools required for extracting necessary survival-level information from your physical environment.
And third, we analyzed the mechanics of social politeness, the please, the thank you, the excuse me, and that crucial formality upgrade of modal verbs like would and could.
These are the shock absorbers, the mitigation devices that smooth out the inevitable friction of human interaction and engineer mutual respect.
It is an incredibly potent, lightweight toolkit. But, the knowledge alone isn't enough. If you are learning a language or helping someone else learn, you have to understand that these 50 sentences are quite literally a key that unlocks countless doors.
But that key is entirely useless if it stays buried in your pocket. You have to pick it up, and you have to speak these sentences aloud.
You must engage the motor cortex.
Exactly. You have to build that vital muscle memory. Don't just read them silently on a screen or in a textbook.
Let the air leave your lungs, let your vocal cords vibrate, and practice the prosody and the tone until it becomes a completely automatic reflex.
Because language fluency is a physical achievement just as much as an intellectual one.
So true. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the architecture of daily communication, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over.
I love a good thought experiment.
Imagine you were dropped into a bustling, chaotic foreign city tomorrow. You don't know a single soul and you don't know the layout of the streets.
A total blank slate.
And let's say you were severely limited. You could only take exactly 3 of these 50 sentences with you in your pocket to survive the day and perhaps make a single friend.
Only 3.
Just 3. Which 3 sentences would you choose? Would you prioritize pure physical survival, clinging to, where is the bathroom?
Yeah.
And I'm hungry?
Highly practical.
Or would you prioritize social connection, Choosing phrases like, how's your day? And the comforting emotional anchor of, everything is okay.
That's a really tough choice.
Think about what that specific choice reveals about your own personal communication style, your hierarchy of needs, and what you inherently value most when trying to connect with humanity.
It says a lot about who you are.
The next time you feel overwhelmed by the sheer volume of things you don't know, remember that you don't need the whole orchestra to make music. Just remember your power chords and start playing.